Hey, everybody, this is Paul, and welcome to a special edition of Conversations with Curtis. This afternoon, I sat down via Zoom with Daniel Albu and Mat Van Rhoon. Matt is a creative director at Big Finish Games, where they are currently doing a remastering of one of the Tex Murphy games. And Matt was kind enough to sit down and chat with us today about our discovery of those 5 VHS tapes of Phantasmagoria 2 and some of the things we might be able to do with it. This is a pretty technical conversation, so I didn't understand most of it, but I think most of you will. And just listening to Matt and Daniel talk about the possibilities and listening to their expertise in this field is really fascinating. So if you want to geek out on what a potential remastering of Phantasmagoria might look like, this is the interview for you. So please enjoy my conversation with Daniel Albu and Mat Van Rhoon. All right, Matt, this is Daniel. Daniel, this is Matt.
Daniel, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Matt is coming to us from Colorado via Australia.
Salt Lake City, Utah via Australia.
Oh, that's where you're in Salt Lake City right now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought you guys were in Denver, and there's no...
No, I've never been, although I've always wanted to go, but no, we are Utah through and through.
Well, okay.
Tex Murphy Big Finish Games is I'm an import.
How long have you been with Big Finish?
Since 2013.
And how'd you get hooked up with them?
Well, basically I've been following Tex Murphy ever since I was 9 years old. Ever since Under a Killing Moon, when I got addicted to full motion video games. And I like to say that they ruined me because they were of such high quality compared to what I was used to seeing on consoles, that it was just like to set that bar as what I consider PC gaming to be, kind of ruined me in terms of just the benchmark. And yeah, when they came out with Tesla Effect, which was a resurgence of the Tex Murphy series after a very, very long hiatus, I said, well, you guys are the whole reason I got into this industry in the first place. So I'm going to show you a show reel. And they said, well, come on out here and help us make some more Tex Murphy. And I'm just like, wow, that is a dream come true.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. How long did it take you to get that reel together? And did you feel like you were going to knock it out of the park, or do you feel like you?
Well, it was kind of like it was a double-edged sword because I already had a reel, but it wasn't really quite as focused on like Tex Murphy and full motion video games per se. And so when they were doing the Kickstarter campaign, I made a series of videos to help get the Kickstarter across the line because I really wanted it to succeed. So I created these fake futuristic news broadcasts that acted as a recap of the series as well as a preemptiveness to what is to come should it succeed. And so I guess it was the perfect show reel because it was all Tex Murphy themed in the first place. So I think it aligned with what they were looking for.
That's great. That's fantastic. And this is your full-time gig now?
It is my full-time gig now. So it's every boy's dream come true to kind of work with. I mean, no doubt, you guys are no strangers to what it's like to have an affinity towards certain products and certain franchises, and to be able to then eventually be contributing to that is a wonderful experience, no doubt.
Getting paid for it sounds pretty cool too.
Indeed, yes.
Well, hey man, thanks for taking time to chat with us. You and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and that was just, as we were talking, I thought this is just too good. I wanted to record it because I just think you've got so much to offer us, both for us, and then I also wanted you to meet Daniel because you had some questions that I can't answer because I'm not that technically savvy. So I thought it would be great to get you guys to connect and we can just have a little discussion today about what you guys are doing and what we discovered, and what we're trying to do with it and stuff. So,
sure.
Would it be worth it to quickly just share with you? I mean, I guess we could start. I don't know where to start. Do you want to start with us kind of talking about our project?
No, I'd love to. I mean, this is all you guys. So, I mean, I kind of ended up, getting connected with you guys through this general affinity and attraction towards your project or what you guys are working on. So by all means, show and tell.
Yeah, for sure. I'll just share that this is kind of a funny story. So months ago, I've never played Tex Murphy, but I'm starting to play these games now and finding out I can see why people love them so much. And so months ago, people said, you really need to reach out to Chris Jones. They're doing this incredible project. And so I found his website, or maybe Daniel sent it to me. And I just went to the, contact us page. And I said, hey, I'd love to meet Chris Jones. And I get a email back from a guy named Matt saying, yeah, let me see if I can hook you up. And so I'm connecting with this guy. And then when we get the tapes for Phantas 2 and we start our Kickstarter, someone on Twitter says, you got to talk to Mat Van Rhoon. He's really good at, he's very up on, upscaling and all that. So I reached out to you on Twitter, and you've been super helpful about, what we needed to do in terms of getting the digitization. And I never put it together that I was talking to, I always thought these were two separate Mats, and it just dawned when at one point I'm like, oh my God, I'm talking to the same guy. So that was
like the plot of an FMV game.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
We're actually two different people sharing the same body. So
yeah, right. Fair enough. But very quickly, a guy from his name's Thierry, and he goes by Words of Magic, and he's he translates video games into French, and he lives in Paris, and I think he's been doing this for 20 plus years. And a long time ago, in 97, 98, he was working for a company. It was after they had already done the Phantas translation, and he saw these tapes in a drawer, and he just thought, I bet you these are going to get thrown away. They're just going to, no one's looking at, they're just going to get tossed. And so he grabbed them, and it's been in a closet somewhere for 25 years. And then when we started our project, Conversations with Curtis, he reached out and said, I have these things. And so we, other than some footage that Wes Plate provided us, Wes was the editor, the original editor of Phantas 2.
Yeah.
And he had kept about 25 minutes of uncompressed, really nice quality video for his reel. But other than that, everything's gone. It all got trashed in there when they went under. So our thought is this is probably the only footage left, and it's only the movie scenes, anything with words. So there's a lot of footage, and Daniel might know how much footage there is that doesn't have words. So anyways, we just did a Kickstarter, a very small Kickstarter campaign, just to see what it would look like. We reached out to you to find out what the things we needed to have them do. And we just got everything back. And for us, it was a modest $500, and we raised over 3,000, and people were super excited. And people that, we have a Patreon page, or I have a Patreon page, and I'd say 70% of the people that donated to Kickstarter didn't even know about us. So there's an interesting community out there, as you well know. And so we just got the footage back, and Daniel can share some of it with you, but
love to.
We also know that you're in the midst of a huge project. And is it all the games, or which games are you?
Despite the scope and complexity of the project, it is still only the Pandora Directive that is getting the full motion video, or not just the full motion video, but the entire game remastering treatment. And actually, I have one of the tapes here just to show you the format it came in. So this was recorded in Beta SP. And so these are massive tapes, each in these ginormous hard cases, and kind of look a little, so you can see just the general size of them compared to a normal cassette. And this was what mostly the Pandora Directive was actually shot on. And we had a similar situation, and that was trying to track down these tapes because Access Software was purchased by Microsoft back at the end of 1998 because Microsoft really wanted to get their hands on their Lynx Golf series. And so they kind of allowed the Tex Murphy series to flounder and find its way into shelves and drawers very similarly. And so it wasn't, if it weren't for the tenacity of people like Doug Vandergrift and Dave Brown, who, when Microsoft finally relinquished the Access Software team back to their own devices, they were just like, we got to collect these things, because as with most big companies do, Microsoft, Sierra, it doesn't matter who they are, they will clean house every so often, and those things will walk. And if it weren't for the archivists in those ranks, these options would just not be available. So yeah, no, we are mainly just going through the Pandora Directive tapes, which is probably about, in total, if we combine the Beta SP and the M2, which was a smaller format for the B camera, there is about 84 tapes for just that one game alone.
Oh, that's amazing. Can you share with Daniel the story of them going in with the truck and all that?
Yeah. Okay, so Microsoft had just kind of like, I don't know the finer details, but I know that at a very high level, Microsoft was kind of done with whatever project they're working on. Either they went to Take-Two or something like that, and then they kind of like dissolved, and they wanted to shut down that particular office. And Microsoft said to these guys, okay, you guys have basically until like the stroke of midnight to get in here and grab whatever you want to take. And 90% of the people who kind of like were leaving were just like, oh, you know, you can trash whatever you like. We really don't care anymore. But Doug Vandergrift and Dave Brown were just like, no, we need to back a truck up to this loading dock and just grab as much as we possibly can, because they're literally going to do it. So they're kind of like in the dead of night, in the darkness, just basically like waving their cards at the access panels and getting all these tapes out and stuffing it in the back of the truck, equipment to run it on. Like, you know, I have a deck behind me, which was part of the equipment that it was all originally Access Software's property that they had moved offices with, but they needed to get all of that back. And they literally just dumped all of this stuff on the back of this truck haphazardly. It was just, if it looked like a tape, they grabbed it. And, you know, stroke of midnight comes along and they're gone, jetting off into the dead of night with basically the entire Tex Murphy legacy, you know, rattling around out back, with this tight deadline of use it or lose it, people, because it is going in the trash.
That's unbelievable, man. Good for them, because it could have, you know, it could have been what we're dealing with, which is it got
Unfortunately, we're not that lucky, because I don't know if you've heard of Chainsaw Monday, which was a day back in February 22nd, 1999, in which 2/3 of the all Sierra employees were let go. And basically they shut down their offices, some of their offices, and everything that was in those offices, like master tapes or whatever, just went into a landfill. So basically the master tapes of Phantasmagoria 1, Phantasmagoria 2, and I think that even Gabriel Knight, or they probably were thrown a bit later, but everything went into a landfill. So that's why we're not so lucky to have master tapes to get the original footage from, and we have to rely on VHS tapes, which are really showing their age with this footage.
No, I heard about this because I was talking to the Video Game History Foundation, and we were talking about just general, you know, the options that companies have now because of those who took those steps to preserve their legacy materials are now able to present themselves with remastering and revisitation options. And when the topic of Sierra came up, I mentioned, now I wasn't fully aware of that Sierra story of exactly how much was lost. But I remember talking to those guys in the interview and I saying, yeah, and you have companies like Sierra, and they all just went,
yeah.
They all just made this like,
yeah,
you know, this salute to the Sierra archives, because it has now become this notorious story that you have this huge resurgence of legacy content being presented to new audiences. But then this, what are we gonna do now that these tapes are gone? So yeah, I feel the pain 100%. I mean, to see so many of these legacy titles just have their master tapes.
Yeah. So that said, I mean, I just throwing this out there, but like, so Daniel can talk a little bit, because he just, we got the first tape back a little bit ago, and then Thierry, you know, who's a busy guy, finally got everything back to us just recently. So Daniel's had a chance to look at everything. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what it looks like, Daniel, and then we can talk a little bit about what the potentials are in the future, you know?
Okay, so like Paul mentioned earlier, these are only scenes that have dialogue in them, which means basically, like in most FMV games, what's missing is actions like picking up objects or using objects or shorter scenes that just get you from one place to another, leaving the apartment, coming to the apartment. Most of the important scenes are there because they contain some sort of dialogue. Basically, we got it in 5 tapes, one for each chapter, since some chapters, it came on 5 CDs. And because you had to switch CDs between chapters, but you still had scenes that were already present in previous chapters. So for example, you had scenes from chapter 1 on the CD of chapter 5 or chapter 4, like coming into the apartment or going out of the apartment. So scenes like this aren't present in those tapes. So basically we have chapter 1, which is I think the longest because it has all of the initial scenes that are present in the later tapes, and that's about it.
Yeah. What's the quality looking like? What is it as good as that first tape, or is it as what's it looking like?
I can share the screen. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so the quality is basically VHS quality. If you want to see a comparison between this and what Wes sent us back in the day, let's see. Okay, so for example, you have this intro scene. Now I paused in this particular frame. If I go and check the second, let me see if I have that.
I'm sure glad you're navigating this because it's been a long time since I played to search exactly where these scenes were in the game.
Oh God, no, yeah, thank God, Daniel knows this like the back of his hand. Probably the way you know Tex Murphy.
I can show you, for example, the quality you have in scenes like this.
Yes.
I don't know if in Zoom it's so apparent, but
we've got a lot of darkness.
What we've got in the VHS tapes contains all of the cons of using a VHS tape. And what Wes has provided us with is direct exports from the Avid Editor program he used back in the day. Yes. So these are direct exports. So
this one on the left-hand side, those are from his show reel that he collected a small set of these clips.
Yeah, let me find that exact scene. Okay, so you have this scene in which Curtis is handed a business card. So you can see, I don't know if you can see the differences.
Oh, we can definitely.
Totally. Yeah.
So even in terms of aspect ratio, it looks a bit, I think it's a bit squashed as opposed to the actual footage. I don't know if it's a problem from the conversion or if it was recorded this way on the VHS tapes. It can be stretched, but you're still creating more artifacts than we already have on the VHS tapes themselves. But as you can see, the footage, if you notice it on Zoom, then you can understand that the footage we got from Wes is of higher quality than the VHS tapes.
Yeah. Was the footage you got from Wells also interlaced?
It was. It was interlaced.
There we go.
Why are you asking?
I was just curious, just because I know that VLC tends to perform its own on-the-fly deinterlacing. So I was just observing some of the edges of the angular objects here, just to sort of determine how it's handling that, whether or not it's embedded in the file or whether or not VLC is.
I can tell you that even Wes's footage is a bit is not in the correct aspect ratio, because when I try to recreate a scene from Phantasmagoria 1 using footage from Wes, I created a side-by-side video. So in order to make the frame the same size as it was in the game, I still had to stretch the height a bit. So on the VHS tapes, you're supposed to stretch it like 10%, and on Wes's footage, you're supposed to stretch it 5% to get to the actual aspect ratio you get in the game. Now, in terms of resolution, it's double the resolution, and double the frame rate. In the game itself, the in-the-game videos are 320 over 168 with 15 frames per second, and this is double that. We're talking about 720 over 480 and about 30 frames per second.
Yeah.
And the footage that Wes provided us with and that we have on the VHS tapes is not color graded. The footage in the game is color graded, so it looks a bit different.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the left we have the VHS footage. On the right we have Wes's footage. I'll just start playing the one on the left, and I'll catch up with the one on the right.
That's pretty close.
You nailed that timing. So I can already tell on the left-hand side, there is some interlacing, mismatching happening on the playthrough compared to Wes's original one. I think Wes's interlacing only really shows up when you hit pause, whereas the interlacing misalignments on the VHS tape is present even in playback. So see on her hair there, on the right-hand side, you can see that there is interlacing, but it's only really visible while it's paused. Because it's performing the deinterlacing on playback, whereas on the left-hand side, even during playback, that interlacing is there because it's been burned into the image on the VHS tape.
From a layman's point of view, I mean, I totally see the difference, but the VHS doesn't. I mean, it's so much better than the game. It's just so much better than what you see when you're playing it on, on whatever. So I'm finding it surprisingly.
We posted a video of a comparison between the in-game video and the VHS tapes.
Yeah.
Back before Wes's interview, we posted a comparison between Wes's footage and the in-game videos, which was a lot more apparent. The difference was a lot more apparent than what we have here. But when I compared the in-game videos to the VHS tapes, the main difference was the frame rate. I mean, in terms of quality, sure, it's double the resolution, but it doesn't feel like it's of higher quality.
It also looks like, if you have a look at the VHS on the left-hand side, let's look at that just underneath the picture frame where the shadow is on the wall between the darker part and the lighter part of the wall there. You'll notice that there appears to be some kind of codec-based compression algorithm applied. Now, that compression, so yeah, just right under the picture frame there, that black line. There we go. So that black line where it transitions from black to white, there appears to be some kind of blocking which is like an MPEG kind of level compression. So it also looks like what they've done is they've outputted from their editing suite to a video that has lossy compression, then dubbed that lossy output video onto the VHS tape as well, because that blockiness is not what VHS tape does. VHS actually preserves color quite decently without blocking algorithms.
Yeah, but probably the artifacts, usually VHS artifacts are, have the RGB colors of sorts. So when they are compressed into an MP4 file, they may create this these artifacts, which are more apparent once you convert them to a digital file.
Plus, it could also be the artifacts present in your final digital format, the MP4 here, depending on its bit rate as well. So
yeah.
Hey, Matt, would it be worth it for us to, and he may not be up for parting with it, but at the end of the day, if we really start to move forward with this, we probably want to get access to the tapes themselves, I would guess, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's a lot you can learn of a tape if you have the ability to insert it into a deck that is uses the precise format it was recorded in, could present you with more options. But like I said, I can only make assumptions based on what I'm seeing at a high level here.
Yeah, sounds good.
And you can also look at the blacks. If you see this line, you see my cursor? The black line on Wes's footage, the black line between the wall and whatever is on the right here, looks like actual black as opposed to
it's chroma limited.
dark gray we have over here.
There is chroma limitations in there as well, depending on the codec. Because remember that MP4s are using 420 for its chroma space, so it is less color detail in it. But there's plenty. I think you guys are fast learning that there's the same way that I did, that there is a lot of things along the way to consider with regards.
Well, I never even looked at I look at the, immediately you're looking at the two people in the image, and then you immediately went to the shadow, and then and so I got like, oh, all of a sudden I have a completely new point of view, and seeing though how the wall is totally different on the left than on the right. And yeah, that's fascinating. It makes me look at this thing in a whole different way, which is what you do on a daily basis. Yeah. So we have these things. We never, there's no promise. We don't own the rights to any of this. We just, these tapes came to us. Now they're digitized. We can look at them. We have numerous things we can talk to you about that we can use them for our own sort of fan fun, privileges, and maybe that's all we ever get out of this, to sort of create fan projects that we can utilize some of this footage. Like, what would you do with something like this? Do you think there's a way, part of it, I look at it and I think it's better than the game. It's not as good as what we're used to seeing these days, but maybe there's a way to use this footage and take advantage of what we all were used to seeing back in the day with VHS tapes, and sort of, I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are and how you approach something. Let's say you had access and the rights to do something like this. What would you do with it?
Well, one of the things that's interesting about it, so yes, certainly if you're looking at the VHS image on the left and you're comparing it to what would be shot today on like a high-end camera, naturally, yes, it does leave a little bit to be desired. However, your primary goal here is going to want to, like how we considered when we were remastering Pandora, it was kind of like a twofold approach. And that was, we wanted to provide people who were used to the game and seeing it, like we even had probably less high quality video on Pandora. We were 256 colors and 10 frames a second for the original Pandora Directive footage. So for the nostalgia value and the nice treat for fans of the game is they're already going to see, and it's the case here with Phantas, you're going to have fans that are going to be like, this is already leaps and bounds beyond what I grew up. It's almost like giving them the chance to play it back with the nostalgia goggles. Because whenever we think of a game, like when I'm reimagining Tex Murphy or reimagining Phantas 2, to me, it's pristine in my head already. And it's not until you go back and play it that you think, oh yeah, there is a lot of this that's dated, but this kind of closes that gap quite a bit. And then again, the other stage of this is for new players. Like if I wanted to say to someone who's 17 or 18 years old now and who's into console gaming and modern PC gaming and say, you have to check out these games, you have to check out Phantasmagoria, their first reaction is going to be to something of the original. I want to get into this, but it is very dated to me. However, this closes that gap even further so that it becomes a more acceptable, more palpable offering, so that modern gamers and modern generations are more willing to accept and give it a go, rather than unfairly judging it as something that is dated. And so I think having understanding that you are coming at this from two angles to kind of meet in the middle is ideally where that value add is going to be for this. Now, I can't really speak on behalf of what it's like to own and not to own the rights of this particular title. But I do know that, at least from my experience with the Tex Murphy community and other adventure game communities, there is a huge level of respect within those veteran game developers for their fan bases. as you're no doubt finding out, Paul, with regards to just how many fans are out there and how many came out to represent for the Kickstarter campaign. Yeah. And how many have represented for Patreon campaigns. You're finding new people every day that say, oh my God, I never knew that this initiative existed. And the beauty about that is the developers, the veteran developers themselves know this and they appreciate this. So I think there's a very high likelihood that if that is indeed the case and they are aware of this, maybe you will have the opportunity to approach them and say, we may not have the rights, but do we have your blessing as a very initial step? Do you sanction this production? Do you give us the blessing to produce it? And I think from there, technical stuff notwithstanding, should be an excellent first step. And I really, really hope that that's the case with Phantas, because what you guys have got here gets you quite a ways along in that process already.
So one of the thoughts we had was kind of creating a proof of concept, so Daniel is a game developer and he knows this game like the back of his hand. So the idea would be to take a scene from the game and completely redo it, emulate it, moment for moment, or maybe even, we have a mini game that we've created where he's actually, that Daniel's created, that he's creating for conversations with Curtis, a little world that we can go into, which is all Phantas related, and you click and some of the promos come up and he's just taking old footage and new footage, and it's just really, really cool. So we could create a clickable game for people to play with the new footage, a short version of that. So that would be the type of thing we would go into if we could get, we're going to need grassroots efforts to get in some doors, because I don't think we can just call Microsoft and say, hey, we got some stuff. We need someone to tell
like the demo reel you created for Tex Murphy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you created the one to showcase your abilities in order to join the project.
Sure.
So we want to create something similar to that, like add the new footage to the game. We also have a Patreon member who upscaled some of the backgrounds, because the backgrounds are also 640 over 480, which was the resolution back then. So he upscaled some of the backgrounds, and we can create, a short remastered version of a certain scene or a certain room, just to showcase what can be done with what we currently have.
I think that's a fantastic idea because, as you said, it's exactly what it is, a proof of concept. It's to show that, you're not just spitballing this idea. You are serious about exactly the extent that you're willing to go to reignite and preserve this content.
It's so big.
Oh yeah, no, it'll cost a lot of time. It'll cost a lot in terms of, resources, etc., and financially as well. And, if it's something that you guys would consider a Kickstarter campaign for, the only thing that I can say for that is I have no doubt that you will find even a lot more people coming out, coming out of the woodwork per se, to be able to say, hey, yeah, I can get behind this project, because there are surprisingly a huge amount of fans of these games, and not just Phantas, not just Tex Murphy, but full motion video games in general, that are just dying to see that content make a resurgence. And for you guys to be able to pull off virtually the impossible, and that is reignite interest and remaster a Sierra title after what happened, you guys are kind of like, you guys can set a benchmark there. And granted, you have some missing content, but people will understand you can only work with what you've got.
I'm a big fan of creativity within boundaries, and so if all of, if we know that all of the footage that isn't dialogue is going to be of a different quality, is there a way that you can creatively use that to your advantage, that it somehow shifts from one to, I don't know what that would be, but I imagine there's some fun ways to play with that, and use that in some sort of retro kind of style. I don't know. It seems like,
well, definitely. I mean, Phantas was a very psychological, thrillery, horror-y kind of genre anyway, which lends itself to a lot of, interpretation and creative freedom with regards to how you want to present the content. But you guys are definitely more the experts on that particular title. But yeah, certainly, there's a lot of creative stuff that you can do.
And what would, again, this is coming from a non-technical person, but like, so at this stage, how much proof of concept, my guess is we would use what we have, because we don't want to put too much energy or any money that we don't have to do this. But eventually there's going to be upscaling that needs to be done with this footage, right? And so how much better can this quality become based on how limited it is?
Glad you asked, because one of the concerns that I had when we first started communicating with one another, so these tapes were recorded in the US. It was the US or Canada that was
US,
yeah. And so it's a very high likelihood that it was recorded in the NTSC format, which is an interlaced format that uses upper field first. And in France, I believe that they're on the PAL format, which is a different resolution, different frame rates, and different field order. They use lower field first, which is what I grew up in Australia with the PAL format. Now, if this initial capturing of those VHS tapes, which are more than likely NTSC, were digitized on a PAL system, you may have a situation where it failed to correctly interpret the tape so that your now digital master is limited in exactly what you can extract for both the deinterlacing process and then subsequently the upscaling process. Because if you take an upper field first interlaced source and capture it with a lower field first process, or even a deinterlaced process that hasn't gone through a more savvier processing, you've already taken a hit in quality. Because I'm assuming your goal is to basically, you've gotten these tapes and you want to have the highest quality path you could possibly take to ensure you have the most options available for your upscaling. So I guess now that you've had a chance to review the footage, because you told me this was your initial concern, just seeing what's there and what you've got so you can make a good judgment on where to go forward. The most important thing before commencing any upscaling is ensuring that whatever digitized format you capture it onto preserves absolutely everything it can from the source format. So in this case, NTSC, the exact resolution, the exact field order, the exact interlacing and everything. And then you take that digital file and perform either machine learning or savvy script-based deinterlacing to create frames. And the beauty about that process is you can take individual fields, an A field and a B field, and convert them to completely separate full frames and get potentially 60 frames per second out of these tapes, which is what we achieved with the Tex Murphy tapes, because those lines were perfectly preserved. And when they were separated, there was enough data in each of them to restore them to full frames. And then once you've done that, the upscaling process becomes infinitely better, because unfortunately, for as wonderful as AI upscaling is, it is not designed to take into consideration many of the pitfalls of older tape formats. They're mostly designed to take already relatively decent digital content, because that's what the algorithms were trained on, and then upscale it there. So there is challenges there, but rest assured that there is a correct path to take to ensure that all of your T's are crossed and your I's dotted to make sure you got the best possible conditions to work with.
Well, I can assure that this footage was created on NTSC, of course, because it was created in the US.
That's Wes's handwriting actually on those tapes.
It was created it was recorded on PAL tapes, because it was for countries in Europe, basically, because they were the ones dubbing the games.
Interesting.
Canada uses NTSC, but there was no dubbing.
So that may
Canada.
actually work against you, because if, for example, their goal was to basically provide the translators in France with just any image, like there obviously wasn't a priority on image quality because these tapes would not be mastered or edited from. It was just basically to get something to the translators in France to watch for the purpose of not caring of what the visual quality preservation would be, and just, can I see the dialogue to be able to write these translation files with? So if it's a case of basically, I've got this NTSC source and I'm just going to smash it out to a PAL tape and let whatever in the pipeline do its magic to change the fields and shift the fields and merge the fields together and all that kind of stuff and skew it. That's probably why you're having aspect ratio issues as well. It probably just did a really junky onto the PAL tape and then sent it away. So now these tapes may have embedded in them a mismatch of that meta information that would have preserved its true source content.
Okay, let me ask a question, like maybe it's a dumb question. So these are the tapes that Wes sent. So they used this and whatever they did, I mean, how could these tapes have been altered if, I mean, they're just the tapes that they used and then they were able to record it to another device, but how is it that this isn't the exact same thing that Wes originally sent?
It is the exact same thing, but back in '96, multi-system videos weren't that popular. It was people in the late '90s bought multi-system video players. But back in '96, in Europe, you had PAL. I had PAL. Everyone had PAL.
Yeah. And the key differences between them and the reason why they existed in the first place was because of the power line. American Power runs on 60 hertz. And so they ran at 30 frames a second. And PAL was a result of, 50 hertz power. So they split it in half to make 25 frames a second. But that's not the only difference. The other difference is PAL was 720 by 576 resolution. And NTSC is 720 by 480, I believe it was 720 by 480 or something like that, or 520. They were different resolutions, which is why you get aspect ratio correction issues. So there are three beasts that would have caused a potential conversion issue when going straight from an NTSC source and just cramming it onto a PAL tape. And I use cramming because that's the most elegant way I could probably describe it. It would have changed the resolution and associated with that potentially the aspect ratio.
But how does it change the resolution on the original tape? How does it?
Well, that's not so the tapes that are behind you in that image, those are the PAL tapes that the original was eventually captured to. So the resolution would have shifted during that transferal process.
Okay.
And so, and also the frame rate as well. Like if they were preserved at 30 frames a second, then yes, but they could have been also down converted to 25 frames a second. And then last but not least, the field order went from upper field first NTSC to lower field first PAL, which has, basically calculation issues with regards to how those fields are reassembled when it's played back. Once again, this is all just spitballing because I haven't actually physically seen the tapes to be able to make that judgment, but that would be the pitfall that Daniel was alluding to.
The video resolution on the digitized files is 720 over 480.
Okay.
With a frame rate of 29.97. The color primaries are listed as 525 lines over 60 hertz. So it's more along the lines of NTSC, but it was probably converted to PAL, then back or...
Then captured to NTSC, yeah. So I'd be fascinated to know what the actual tapes, what format they are holding, because if they are PAL tapes, then it's likely they went from 29.97 NTSC to PAL, lower field first, 25 frames a second, and then when they were captured in France, back to NTSC. So you have two stages of signal conversion happening there.
This is why, once you start talking in numbers like this, is why Daniel's here, because I'm hearing, just you're talking in data.
No, you probably got a lot of viewers as well.
They'll get it. They'll get it. They'll laugh at my ignorance.
The problem is that these tapes were not in any way used for the video footage that was used in the game, because the sound quality is horrific. There's a lot of clipping. They basically did the left channel is just the sound effects and the right channel is just the dialogue, so that when they were working on dubbing the game, they just listened to the right channel to listen to the dialogue and then probably mix it just to hear how it sounds all together. But they probably sent over just the tapes of the recordings with the numbers of the scenes so that they can adjust it accordingly. But I doubt that these tapes were created in order to use for any type of conversion for the game itself. It was just as a reference for the
it would require using the original the audio from the game that's out there to dub into these video files, right?
We can't use the audio of the VHS tapes.
Yeah. But you know, that's not to say that throughout this conversion process that you're out of luck. By all means, I mean, what you have is already vastly superior to what was shipped with the game. I mean, first and foremost, you have a higher frame rate, a greater resolution, and yeah, you may have some issues resulting from the fields shifting throughout the conversion process, but you know, you will have something that is going to be an excellent baseline to perform upscaling and conversion on. Is it the most ideal? No, but is it better than what's already in the game? Heck yes.
Yeah. Wow. So I should have asked you this before, Matt, and if it's too much of a pain, no problem. But do you have any, I mean, I know is there anything you could kind of share that you guys are working on?
Sure. I'm going to do a screen share. It was from an article that we posted on our website, but I can screen share the content here.
And I don't know if you saw it, Paul, but the beauty of what they're doing in addition to the upscaling is that several scenes were shot from different angles. So they actually have certain scenes that they present in a different angle in the upscale game.
Oh man, that's so awesome.
So we had an A camera and a B camera. So these are the decks that were kind of like preserved. And this image shows this tape on this side here. If I kind of zoom in here, you can see this was the M2 tape. That was the B camera. And the issue with that is all of these M2 decks had a busted loader mechanism for the smaller format M2 tapes. So for each of the M2 tapes, we actually had to take the spools out of those and put them into a standard VHS
oh my God, that's
shell.
Crazy.
So we had to do.
Were you shaking when you were doing it?
Well, thankfully I wasn't. I left it up to the professional splicer there at the production house to take care of this one. But yeah, literally had to take the insides of our tapes and basically reassemble them. So a little bit of tape surgery just to get them to be read in these M2 formats. Now, going back to the interlacing, the reason why we kind of, one of these decks was actually sourced from the old NBC studios in Rockefeller Plaza. They were closing down their studios and the guys were just like, we need to get our hands on this deck. I mean, these decks used to cost $60,000, $80,000 back in the day in the late 80s and 90s. And you can get them at, when I say a steal, like, you know, much cheaper than what they were, but still expensive because production houses need them for this exact reason. So our goal is to ensure that for every single tape format, for whether it's, you know, the beta tapes that we originally used or the M2, to get the precise exact decks that they were used originally to be the ones to capture, to avoid that conversion pitfall that is happening with the Phantas tapes, and that is converting from PAL to VHS to NTSC and then back again. So our goal is to preserve the source content. And then with that in mind, we then perform a deinterlacing. So as you can see here, this is what interlacing looks like when it is poorly interpreted or not handled correctly by the output format. You see that the A field and the B field kind of create this combing effect on the side. And the middle image shows what the AI upscaling algorithm, how it handles it. And as you can see, it sees this and it's not trained in dealing with interlacing on footage. And so it does its best, but then you have this just a slightly better looking combing effect with higher resolution. So you just got a higher resolution problem, essentially. So what we ended up doing is we used a script-based video conversion tool that deinterlaces it. And this was the output of that deinterlacing process via the script-based deinterlacer, which has its own algorithms that reconstruct these individual fields. So this is just a single one of those fields reconstructed into a full frame, which resulted in this image here for the output. So you can see this is our before and after. This is the original tape. And this is the final result as a result of the deinterlacing plus the AI upscaling to 4K.
That's great.
What was the interlacing apparent during playback? Did you see these lines when you were playing back the footage itself? Or during the...
It depends. So if you're playing it back on the original hardware on an actual CRT television, no, you will not see it because it is rendered in a way that's designed to be invisible to the human eye. But also when you play back a digitized tape that is interlaced on a computer, many players like VLC or Media Player Classic or even the professional ones will want to perform for you a deinterlacing by combining these fields for you, because they're under the assumption nobody wants to see this ugly deinterlacing on an LCD. But you can tell those to say, no, don't perform any post-processing. Give me the raw data. And then, yes, if you pause the frame, you will see this interlacing on the source footage. And that's when you can tell, okay, we need to process this correctly. So in order to get it to the 4K 60, you want to deinterlace it so that now your upscaling algorithm can say, I am working with hard, clear lines rather than combed interlaced fields.
Well, when I turn off the deinterlacing in VLC, I still see the same exact footage. And I also worked on the footage on Adobe Premiere and also in After Effects, and I didn't see any of these issues.
Sure. So yeah, so it's one of those things that it is most likely because of the result of, most likely is the result of perhaps that deinterlacing was performed in one of the digital to tape, then tape back to digital processes. Because when you showed me that, you'll notice I had a question when you had the side-by-side next to one another. I'm going to stop sharing here for a second. But I can just show you a quick video here. So this is an example of the before and after.
Oh, wow.
That's Pandora, and this is the final upscale.
Yeah, and that's the different angle I was talking about.
Yes.
In the first clip.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Oh my God, that's incredible. Oh, this is exciting. How far? When's the? Is this just a constantly push? Does the due date keep going back because of all the work that you need to do, or?
Well, the biggest challenge has been basically just the amount of phases we've had to go through with machine learning, like to convert 84, 85 tapes and upscale them. You know, we have a machine over here. I have a picture of the machine that we've been using to do it, but we have a machine over here that has, you know, a 20-core processor and 128 gigabytes of RAM and a RTX 3090 computer in it. And even then, with all of that particular horsepower that is going into it, it takes just to do one pass about 3-4 months of constant 24/7 processing on that computer. And we have done that twice already because as we've gone through it, we've learned more things about that particular process. And subsequently, we just finished a second pass of that. So another 3 or so months. And then we're about to basically conduct a third pass to ensure that we're basically doing it the right way, because different algorithms have different pros and different cons when it comes to handling the footage, essentially.
Man, oh man. What are your hopes? Like, when would your fans get a chance to see get to play this new version of the game?
We've learned over the past few years to adopt the Gabe Newell approach to when a game is going to be done, and that is when it's done,
when it's ready.
Yeah, gotcha. Mainly because even for us, the Big Finish Games here, the studio that has been responsible for this series, doing this entire process in-house. We are also a small team of people that are kind of doing it in between projects, etc., because it is something that is born out of passion. So even though we're not a fan-based team anymore with this particular project, there is still that, borrowing time to focus on it from a passionate sense more than anything else. So, will we reach a point where we can put in some definitive deadlines? Yes, we will reach that point. But at this stage, when we're still relying on the technology to give us the answers to these questions, we're still trying to assess.
Yeah. Are you finding this answered after 3 or 4 months, or are you checking it mid-process? How are you working?
So we do check it mid-process. So as it processes, we see the A and B happening in real time during this, upscaling process. So we can actually tell immediately, oh yes, this is a much better algorithm. Because as I mentioned, the reason why we're doing it is Pass 1 was really great on close-up shots, but terrible when people were in the distance. And Pass 2 was great on people in the distance, but terrible on people close up. And then Pass 3 was when something moved fast across the screen, the deinterlacing algorithm we used for A and B was a little bit junky. So we have this combing. So now we're doing a pass on the deinterlacing, so that Pass 3 is cognizant of fast moving objects. And then we assemble the three of them together and pick the best one for any given scene to ensure we've got the best baseline.
Right.
So basically a $5 million project, right? That's the somewhere.
It's the $5 million question, more like it.
$1 million.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, Matt. You've been so helpful. I do want to just, when you and I talked before, you had mentioned, I mean, the people that follow Conversations with Curtis mostly are aware and are huge fans of Tex Murphy and kind of what you're doing. I don't think there's a lot of people in the Tex Murphy world that know that we have this potential little golden nugget. And you had talked about there might be some real interest, some cross interest to know that, any game from this era that might have the potential to get seen by more fans or to get a better, a better viewing of it would be of interest to your group. I'm just kind of curious if there is a way to, to find a way to connect.
Oh no, most certainly. Like I said, it was when I was also tagged on those tweets when your project was brought to light to me because one of those particular mutual fans who knew of Tex Murphy was following us and then knew of Conversations with Curtis and followed you for a very long time. When you had announced that you had found these tapes and they acted as this go-between, the first thing that popped to my mind is, we have to stick together. All of us FMV veterans and developers and producers of this content have to help each other out because at the end of the day, to me, attention and being able to express these projects, that it's not a finite resource. It can be shared, and your success is the genre success and subsequently vice versa. So yes, I mean, there is you hit the nail right on the head. I would wager that there isn't a single Tex Murphy fan who isn't aware of the existence of Phantasmagoria purely because it was a phenomenon
of that time.
Within the genre, of that time. And so, yes, when you first asked me, is there some way that we can leverage the fan bases between two of these? Heck, yes, they can be brought together. So by all means, once this particular interview goes live, it'll be published naturally to all of the Tex Murphy fan groups, Facebook, Twitter, Discord, etc. Because I believe that your success is going to be success for the genre as a whole. And I think we can lift everybody up. And as I also mentioned to you before, throughout your technical process, I am more than happy to continue giving feedback and consulting on different aspects of this, because I see a lot of great potential in your project as a whole.
No, that's great. Thank you so much. That's really exciting to hear. And it's just, it takes the sense of scope and how overwhelming this can be. And it just makes, I think that as long as we, it's just so nice to be able to acknowledge that this is something we all care about, and we'll do what we can to, take the next step towards whatever this will be. As you said, it's the $1 million question. It may not ultimately be what we thought it was going to be, but it's going to be something, and people are going to get something out of it, No,
exactly. I mean, it's not a competition here. It's just pure love for the genre, and we already have that commonality. So why not just pool together and just get this stuff made?
Yeah.
It may not be an upscale. It can be preservation only.
Precisely. Oh, no, the Video Game History Foundation would love to hear that there is at least something from the Sierra Chainsaw Massacre that survived the situation.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, next time we talk, I would love to, Daniel and I are going to do a little show and tell next Monday of his mini game. So the game I was telling you about, where we actually can walk into the world of Phantaz and find this sort of crossover between what we're doing now. So once that's done, if you can't join us, no problem. But what we'll do is we'll maybe cut together a little bit of it so we can share it with you, because I'd love to get your thoughts on
Oh, I would love to.
Yeah,
absolutely. And no, I want to thank you for being so willing to invite me to this process and make me aware of the situation. Because like I said, you know, I'm passionate about everything, and Phantas was a game I played, you know, and that's in that same period of time. So it's once again, it's another dream come true.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to play Tex Murphy, and I can't wait to talk to Chris after I do. So we'll have to
we will get that lined up.
I'll talk to the other Matt at some point and see if he can get me set up.
That's perfect.
All right. Well, hey, Chris, thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and we'll be in touch very soon and keep this process going, huh?
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah, take care.
Thank you, Matt.
Bye-bye.